Hey everybody, it's Brian Galke. We met the other night at the dinner. So I'm Brian Galke, the decoding detective. I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. And you already kind of know why we're here. It's how to understand people based on their resting facial features. So what you did get the other day is you got a copy of the cheat sheet that Christina printed out for everyone. But a lot of people ask, well, how did you learn all this material? If you click on this QR code, this is all the books and resources I ever learned from. Mentors, books on negotiation, like how Never Split the Difference, body language books, you name it. Or if you just want to follow on social media and try and figure out, do I want to know this guy or not? That's what this particular QR code is for. As we mentioned at the dinner, I started out as an introvert on the help desk. But when I learned to focus on other people, I learned to get out of my own way. And it's what took me from that introvert to being a regional vice president of sales with a $40 million book of business. And I used to sell technology to jails and prisons. So you're talking about very stoic people that were very hard to read, but it's how I became more successful over time. Now, we mentioned before, what's the worst you're going to get if you learn this skill? How to get free food and drinks, how to get upgrades at hotels and airlines. I do this all the time. And it's fun, and it makes people feel seen and heard at the exact same time. Now, we mentioned before, this was actually part of the academic system until Henry VIII said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds will use this against their fellow man. And he had it yanked out of the education system, which is kind of crazy because this is the same guy that every time he got tired of a wife, he found a way to 86 him. So I'm not sure he's the best person to be making decisions for us on life and everything else, but it is what it is. So if it wasn't for that, we all would know this skill because we'd be part of the academic system. So that one person who didn't like the skill changed why it was only taught to certain groups of people over time instead of to everyone. As I mentioned before, I'm an introvert by nature, so I'd be out in public and living in the prison of my own mind at the exact same time. But what do introverts do? Well, we take courses, we buy books, go to seminars, we sign up for training. And I learned all these really cool skills that helped me a little bit, like how to win friends and influence people, body language books, courses, you name it. But the thing that changed my life was a random dinner with this guy right here in 2010. This is Mac Fulfer. He was an attorney who learned it for jury consulting, and he ended up realizing it has such a practical aspect that he ended up leaving his law profession and teaching this all around the world. And I was lucky enough to meet him. Now, it was a fluke circumstance. A friend came in from out of town. She said, hey, let's go to dinner. I show up at the restaurant. She calls to say she's going to no-show. So I get a little bit upset. She's like, you got to come to this trade show. You got to meet this guy. So why do I need to meet this guy? She goes, because he reads faces. And I go, I'm not coming for that BS. I thought, I have all these books on body language, you name it. I've never heard of this. It can't be real. But I went over there with a grudge. She finally convinced me to go, but I thought, I'm going to blow holes in this guy. He's going to say generic things like, oh, you've had a hard time in life, you name it. And he ended up sitting us all down at dinner, and he went person by person, decoding their faces. And when he got to me, he read me to a T. I'm like, man, this guy's been digging through my trash. It was crazy how accurate it was. And I paid attention to everybody else because I thought he's going to use these, the same statements for us, and we have different facial features. And I watched, and I couldn't catch the guy do anything. So what did I do? I started driving twice a month from Dallas to Fort Worth. That's where I live, is in Dallas, to do group training. And it just helped me excel in so many areas of life that I became one of his top students. And then when he retired during COVID, I ended up taking on speaking. So I ended up leaving corporate America in 2022. This is what I do full time. I speak to groups from 40 to 1,000, you name it. And like you guys saw, we end up bringing people up on stage. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's a skill that changed my life. Now, I mentioned before I was an introvert, and what I love about Batman is he's, quote, a superhero, but it's all about the tools he has in his tool belt. And this was the best tool that I had, but I needed all those other tools at the exact same time. So today, take some time, watch the video, play with the cheat sheet you already have, and it'll just help you get to your goals that much faster. So we mentioned before, who do you end up using it on? Complete and total strangers. So I can go to people I've never met, like some of you who were at the dinner who came up and talked to me afterwards when we were outside, to using on existing staff, coworkers. That's how I got moved to be a regional vice president, negotiating contracts with vendors. But you know who else you can use it on? Everyone in your personal life, your friends, your family. And you'll learn to start understanding things that used to drive me nuts about people that now I just appreciate them for who they are. So they say, with the face comes grace. Well, that's kind of true. As you're going to learn this, you'll learn to understand and meet people where they are instead of where you hope that they are. What industries have I taught this skill to? Well, we've taught to pretty much you name it. So door-to-door sales is probably the craziest one because they have 7 seconds before somebody slams the door shut, pulls a gun, or calls the cops. Automotive, realtors, negotiations, all kinds of business people. I've taught to engineers, obviously attorneys. We've taught this for jury selection. And yes, I have a dating course, Looking for Love in allthewrongfaces.com, because I got so tired of everyone asking me to analyze their potential dates' faces that I just created a course that is super simple, super cheap, just so they would quit bothering me. And it's changed people. It's changed lives because when we learn to appreciate things about others, we're not forcing the way that we think on other people at the same time. Now, where it really took off was during the pandemic. Why? Because all of a sudden we went from being in person and in offices to get things done to having digital acquaintances. Well, when we started going from the room to the Zoom, all of a sudden my body language went out the window. I can't see their arms. I can't see their legs. I don't even know if they're wearing pants. A lot of people looked professional up top and had like workout gear on down below. So all the body language skills I learned were on hold until I got back into the room again with other people. But what I started realizing with the skill is that when I stopped thinking about me and my product and my presentation and my service, I started focusing on the other people. They started focusing on me as well. So look at the 2 pictures here. When the person on the left is making it all about them, nobody's paying attention. But when he's giving them their time and attention and actually thinking, are they the right client? How can I help my client? Instead of, I'm going to make them use me, it changes things. There's 4 basic human needs: physical safety, emotional safety. People want to feel seen and heard, and people want to feel connected. And that's what you're going to learn today is how to make people feel seen and heard to create that connection with the people you have to work with the insurance adjusters, with your staff, with your coworkers, with other people in the industry that you need to partner with. So a lot of times I get asked some 3 pretty basic questions, and that is, can I read palms? Nope. Am I a wizard? Nope. And can I predict the future? All those are pretty much a no. So as you can see from the pictures here, those are the questions I get asked. But yes, it's crazy when you learn these things, what people think you know about them, but all you're really looking at is each of their facial features and figuring out, how do I speak to that person? And I know what you're thinking, same thing I was probably thinking. What's it based on? It's based on something known as physiognomy. Now, physiognomy has been around since the Greeks. The first known book on it was by Aristotle. And it's a study of the 43 muscles in the face, and the mind creates movement, and movement creates muscle. So as we think about things, what happens is we make those faces. So remember our parents said, stop making that face or it'll get stuck that way. Well, there's some truth to that. So it's about learning just where people are today when you meet them. Now, the really crazy thing is we talk about faces all the time. We say, take one on the chin, keep a stiff upper lip. I'm all eyes, I'm all ears, you name it, or they've got an eye for this. We can just keep going down the list of things that we talk about with faces. And faces are like a map. It's where somebody been before to where they today. That's more the wrinkles or lines. But it's just how to understand people that much better. And here's the crazy part. I mentioned before that Henry VIII had it pulled out of the academic system. But you know who still took courses on it? Authors. For all the books that we ever had as required reading, they did it for character expansion. Back then, men wore suits, women wore dresses. There wasn't a lot to describe. So the only things to describe in the books were the people through their actions and through their facial features. Now, who else took these courses? Artists did. Why? They had to learn to create characters. So they would read a book and think, how do I draw the person that's there? So they had to take the same courses as the authors to create the pictures that we got used to. So we've been trained this entire time through required reading in school, through fairy tales, comic books, Disney movies, you name it. We all understand more than we think about others strictly based on their facial features. And I mentioned it before, I'm a skeptic, but I'm a curious skeptic. So when I was first introduced to this, I told you I went to go prove that Mac was a fraud. And he won me over. And I went out and I started doing it in real life. And what happened is I saw positive results. And I would take the book with me somewhere and I'd lay it out. And, human curiosity would kick in. They go, well, what's the book about? Oh, let me tell you, I think this guy's full of crap, but I learned this material. Can I ask you some questions? And I'll show it to you in the book. And they're like, yes. And where am I now? 14 years of doing this, and it's what changed my life. There's so many skills that have helped me to a degree, but this was the biggest one that had the biggest impact. Now, you guys actually got to see an example of this the other day. The way I end after training is to bring people up on stage. So we ended up doing that because we only had a short period of time the other day. But we can take total strangers and tell them about themselves, and more importantly, their friends, their family, their coworkers that are there can validate what you're saying. It's a crazy skill. Now, the number one question I get is, well, isn't it all genetics? Yes, it's genetics up until the moment you're born. Then what happens is something known as epigenetics comes into play. And that is, how does the outside world influence you down to a DNA level? So I mentioned before, the mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. Well, we all see this guy in the yellow, right, where he's got big upper body, little tiny legs. That's not his genetic code. That's that guy never doing leg day ever. And our faces are the same way. Whichever muscles get moved and used the most by the emotions and thoughts that we have will alter and change our face over time. People go, I still don't know about that. Don't worry. I always start with showing my own face. Why? Because nobody ever wants to look at me again once they find out what I do for a living. So if you look at these pictures, I point out the various changes that we had. So this is 18 and 38. Now I'm 49 now. So there's even more changes in my face. But look, at 18, my ears used to stick out farther away from my head. My eyebrows used to be straight versus angled. And my eyes used to angle down quite a bit. So those are all things that changed in my face over time based on the thoughts that I had, based on the experiences I was having throughout life. And that's just it. As we make those faces, our minds change and alter over time. So I know people ask, and a lot of people asked when we were at dinner the other night, well, what about plastic surgery? Look, I am a huge fan of whatever makes you feel sexy. I don't care if it's a nice pair of shoes, the car you drive, a power suit, you name it. Plastic surgery to me is the same way, is the same thing. And the whole thing about it is plastic surgery is just a permanent version of what women have been doing for a very long time. And that is they wake up every day and decide, what on my face do I want to stand out? And they highlight those features. Well, now we can do it through plastic surgery. Number one plastic surgery right now, lip enhancement. Why? When we say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip, when we see people who have thinner lips, we think, uh-oh, stay away a little bit. They'll open up over time. But if I ask too many personal questions too soon, they'll shut down. However, fuller upper lips are seen as more approachable. And we talked about makeup before. Look at older women, their 80s and 90s. They'll actually draw larger lips than they actually have with lipstick. So they didn't know why they were doing it, but now you know why they're doing it. Now, I mentioned that this skill changed my life. And when they were reading out my bio, we talked about I was flown around the U.S. for any presentation over $1 million to go help win that set of business. Well, what I would do is before I got to the room, because I'd learned this skill, I would go and look up people on LinkedIn. And then I would find a picture of them, and I'd go from LinkedIn to social media. Now, that's if they have public profiles, you name it. But the reason I would migrate away from LinkedIn is because LinkedIn is usually a professional photo. You don't know if it's been touched up. You don't know if they inverted the image, and you don't know how long ago it was. It's like realtors, when you see they're for sale signs and you meet them, they're like 30 years difference. We only go get professional headshots done when work tells us to, we get a promotion, something of that nature. So start on LinkedIn and then move over to social media. But if I was looking on LinkedIn, I would go and find the person, start looking at features, and start tailoring my message for the person instead of just showing up to pitch the same thing that I've memorized over and over again. So this is Sam Taggart. He owns the largest door-to-door training event in the U.S. And I went and taught him, after speaking at his event, how to do it. He ended up putting me in his book the following year. So this is the impact it can have. So imagine this guy signs up for tons of training, scripting, language, you know it, SOPs, body language, everything that he had to learn because they have 7 seconds, like I said earlier, before somebody slams the door shut, pulls a gun, or calls the cops on him. So that's how you can use it all proactively. Now, how can you use it reactively? Well, if you find yourself in a Zoom or in a room, networking event, you name it, you can still figure out with this much real estate on somebody's face, how do I learn to speak their language? Now, if you look at the picture on the left, you'll notice that there's that little yellow Post-it note that's right above the camera. Why do we do that? Because we get so busy wanting to look down at everyone else's face that sometimes we forget that we're not making eye contact with the Zoom attendees. Very simple, inexpensive trick. Just draw that arrow, and then you know where you're looking when you're on the Zoom, and people will feel like you're paying attention. That creates that, they feel seen, they feel heard, and it creates that connection that we talked about before. The other thing I love about how analyzing facial features is because I'm giving eye contact. I'm looking at where the person is. If I'm only reading body language, I'd be looking down the entire time. Body language is important, but if you're not paying attention to the person, they can feel that, and they feel like something else is more important than them. Now, I also look for people and I say, okay, for the size of their face, are their ears large or are their eyes large? Or is this area right here large? So if they have larger ears and smaller eyes, they're auditory. So you say things like, oh, it sounds like a good idea. I hear where you're coming from. If they have smaller ears and larger eyes, and again, it's in proportion to their face, not a direct correlation, then I'd say things like, I see where you're coming from. I get the picture. Now, if they have a wide area right here called a philtrum, if it's wide below the nose and above the lip, that's a more kinesthetic hands-on learner. So I'd say things, action words. Once we get rolling on this project, is this something you can really wrap your hands around? Use action words to talk to the people. Now, that's just a generic thing that you can do very, very easily. Now, here's where the tactical part comes in. We're going to talk about eyebrows. And I know you're thinking, eyebrows aren't that important. People go and get them done. Go and Google people without eyebrows. Because if you do, you will be amazed at what you see when it's there. So here's a picture of celebrities that we know very well. They've been in a lot of movies, but we take away that one feature, it's like we don't know who we're talking to. It's crazy. Now, people would do this in a live seminar, like, that's a horrible image to leave us with. Don't worry, I got you. So then I added in this one. So this is just babies, but by changing one feature, it changes how we see the kiddos. So my favorite one here is this one right here, the little kid that's just laughing but looks like an evil genius. Well, we're going to learn what angled eyebrows mean here in just a second. But to give you another example, this is one person, and we took away one feature, but it changes how we see and how we would interact with them. So I mentioned earlier, we're influenced by life. Well, if you go out there and you look, there are two types of comedy. There's highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. Why do we use those terms, and what does it mean? Highbrow humor is when somebody tells you a joke, and you have to kind of think about it for a minute, and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is Jackass or Three Stooges, physical comedy, instant laughs. Well, when you see people who have a higher eyebrow, you imagine that eyebrows are like speed bumps, and if Data's got to race down their forehead to get in their eye, the higher the speed bump, I can only go so fast, go over the speed bump, and try and speed up again. So if you have 30 minutes on their calendar, you're probably going to be talking 15 to 20 minutes before they ask questions. However, on the opposite of that is if somebody's eyebrow is very low to their eye, that's like putting a speed bump by the stop sign. Data races down their forehead and they make decisions very fast. Now, let me be very clear. This has nothing to do with intelligence. It's just how fast do they feel comfortable pulling the trigger. So sometimes it's better to wait and have high eyebrows. Sometimes it's better to be the first action taker and have low eyebrows. So it's not intelligence, it's their gut of when do they feel comfortable pulling the trigger on something. So then you just start looking at people and you think, okay, if I knew that somebody's going to need more time in this group, who would I make eye contact with first? Number 4, because she has the highest eyebrow. Then number 3, because she's got the next highest. 1, 2, and 5, they're pretty much the same. But this is how when I go and do these presentations to government officials, I would look in the room and start thinking, who's going to need more time? When do I make eye contact with those different people? And that's just based on eyebrow height. Now, the other thing you can learn about eyebrows is there's 3 basic eyebrow shapes. Look, even Lego knows that this is true. So they show straight eyebrows, angled eyebrows, and rounded eyebrows. And we're going to learn what all 3 of those mean. But it's like the game when we were a kid. You got to put the right peg in the right hole. That's what this is like. So you start looking at people and go, okay, what does straight eyebrows mean? Straight eyebrows mean get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. I mentioned before that we were influenced through books, fairy tales, comic books, cartoons, even television and movies. So look at Spock here. What's Spock known for? Logic. What is eyebrows did they give him? Straight eyebrows. Warren Buffett doesn't invest in stocks he feels good about. He's 100% about the numbers. So straight eyebrows, get straight to the point. The next one is angled eyebrows. I mentioned I got angled eyebrows over time. Mine were once I became a corporate trainer, then they started to become angled. Why? Because angled eyebrow people have to know what's my angle, help me understand it. Then I can figure out how to help other people. Ruth Ginsburg here knew that she wanted to help women, but she had to go to law school first. So help them understand what's their angle, what's the benefit of using you, what's the benefit of your product or service, for them first to figure out how to help their customers. But the third one that you see here is rounded eyebrows. And that is people with rounded eyebrows think about the people around them first and themselves second. So if you make it about them, you're going to lose them. You want to talk about their customers, their coworkers, their friends, their family, the people in their life, their sphere of influence is who they consider first. So using this again, like I said, when I go into a hotel, I walk up and I know I want an upgrade, but I get it based on the person behind the desk. So if they have straight eyebrows, I'll go, I'd like an upgrade, please. If they have angled eyebrows, hi, I'm Brian, I'm a Diamond member. Are you the person who can get me an upgrade? I make it about them. What's their benefit to help me? I'm a Diamond member. The third one is if they have rounded eyebrows, I know they think about other people first, themselves second. I'll walk up and go, oh, that was a really long flight or a really long drive. I just wish I had a larger room I can kind of stretch out in, kind of walk around in. Is an upgrade available? So I'm asking for the same things 3 different ways, but it's based on the person, but I just have one single desire. But when I try to speak their language, they're going to try and help me at the exact same time. People go, well, what about glasses? Well, look at person number 1. What shape are his eyebrows? How high are they? Are they low? Well, he's got high rounded eyebrows, just like his glasses. Same thing with number 2. So you start looking at people, you don't have to see their eyebrows. Their glasses will tell you how they take in and process information at the exact same time. Then you see number 3, number 4, number 5 here. So you can see people from across the room. And why do I teach eyebrows? Because eyebrows lead to eye contact. That's a lost art this day and age. We are digitally connected to everyone, but we're disconnected from each other. This is a way to bring that connection back on purpose, and it'll help you build rapport with others, which builds relationships, which is what business is based upon. So how do I use this? I like the acronym FACE: find, assess, convert, and express. I go top to bottom, left to right. I'll explain that another time. But if you want to see it, find the person. I go look them up on LinkedIn and social media like we talked about before. Then I look and say, what do their features on their face stand out? So that's where I assess the meaning. Then I think, do we have the same or different? If it's different, then I have to convert it. And then finally, I express it back to the person. So when I was younger, I used to go to other countries and I thought, oh, well, they should speak English. And if they don't speak English, well, I'll speak English louder. And that doesn't work very well for people. But when you try to speak someone else's language, they try and speak yours back at the same time. So we only had a short period of time today. Look, I've given you the QR code. I'm going to pop it back up again here in a minute with all the resources. You can learn this on your own. You can follow me on Instagram, social media, you name it. Or you can reach out, and I do training on this as well. So I have courses. I come out and do consulting. You name it. We can do those things. But where can you go and practice this at? Christina already gave you the cheat sheet. Go start using this everywhere that there is somebody in the service industry. They're overworked. They're underpaid. They're underappreciated. If you give them a few seconds of your time and you think, how high or low are their eyebrows? What shape are their eyebrows? They will feel seen and heard in a position that's often dismissed by other people. So next time you go for coffee, stop buying the next person's coffee because you're only affecting one person. But if you learn to focus on the person taking care of everyone else, you create that ripple effect that has the ability to change 15 lives instead of 1. And as I mentioned before, we're in a disconnected age where people don't feel like they're living up to what they see on social media for other people. There was an Intelligent.com study that new hires out of college, 53% of them couldn't make eye contact when they went for a job interview. This is a superpower, what you're learning today, if you're willing to go out and use it on people. You can change lives. You can save lives just by paying attention to other people at the exact same time. So once again, I'm Brian Galke. It was a pleasure meeting all of you guys at dinner. Christina, thank you for having us there. If you have questions, reach out. This is a skill that changed my life. I want it to change everyone else's life too. Have a great day.